Oh, you know what I love?
Sports.
Love sports.
Sports. When
it comes to
Texas A&M.
Where are you getting this information?
let me tell you.
Welcome to TexAgs.
TexAgs Live.
I feel like I should be listening to the theme song from the Jeffersons. You know, we're moving on up.
We will develop men. We will graduate players, and we will win championships on the field.
It's a blessing to be in this position, and we're just thankful to be here. We're thankful to have the opportunity to go out there and play in front of the 12 man.
He is a guy that has gotten better and better and better. He's just got that dog in him.
It's been special. The 12th man this past week was unbelievable.
And this is a real program. It's not fake. This is a real place. And if you want to be really good at football, this is a really good place to be.
You know, if I'm betting on anybody, it's the Aggies. Does it mean anything? We're about to find out. Actually, I don't think we're going to find out for a while. It's TexAgs Live. We're presented by David Gardner's Jewelers Rollo Insurance Studio. The Go Hour, presented by the Warehouse at CC Creations. I'm David Nuño. He's Ryan Brauninger in for OB today. OB will be back on Wednesday. Brauny, the house settlement finally gets done. And
well, you're jumping right into it this morning.
that's how I always, every show I jump right into the topic.
That's not true. That's not true. Because we sat over there last week in the Holistic Planning Cool Zone. There's your ad read for this morning.
Hey.
And we started talking sports in the first segment. You're like, we never talk sports in the first segment.
I always start off, actually, we can ask the group. We can ask Luke Evangelist, who's never awake at 8, but Nick's back there.
I can't believe that Luke's here.
He's actually done a really good job since he was taken to the principal's office. He's done a really good job.
Well, he just had too many tardies?
No. I'm not going to do that to poor Luke. Luke, you know, like we start off, usually the first 20 seconds, we go straight into the topic, and then somehow we get derailed.
I didn't know the flow of the show.
Yeah, Brauny, you've already messed it up.
So, house settlement. I think it's a step in the right direction, but
is it?
It's a step, but I don't think it's going to matter.
Yeah,
it's some guardrails that already programs are finding ways to work around.
Yeah, that was seemingly the conversations I was having on Saturday night when all this stuff, was it Friday night, Saturday night, whatever night it was that all this stuff went down. Obviously, I'm trying to cover a baseball portal and football recruiting. Yeah. It's kind of, all at once here. So I'm talking to folks on both sides of that, and they were up late trying to figure out, how real is this? And then how, what are the next steps to, where's the loopholes? There's always loopholes. And whether you're talking of high school football recruiting, baseball portal recruiting, it's all about player acquisition. That part hasn't changed in terms of the rules are, like you said, I think they're just guidelines right now.
They're guidelines, yeah. But what's going to happen to the smaller sports, the Olympic sports, at the big schools? For instance, Texas A&M, Ohio State, Texas, Alabama, Auburn, these schools that have SEC schools, right? So if you've got, $20.5 million to spend on your athletic budget, okay? Most of that money is going to go to football. Basketball and baseball will get the next, and then what's left? So what I think is going to happen is some of these smaller schools, at smaller conferences, that have maybe a small budget, but in that sport, they can maximize that budget.
Yeah, I think that will be individualized based on institution and where they feel like their dollars are best spent. What I do know that it is going to put a massive strain on the mid-majors, and then you start getting in football, the FCS level football. They're really going to feel the squeeze. Now, where you can say, all right, this is going to be good for parity, is that now if everybody can't just go pay for the best players, real coaching and real recruiting comes back to the forefront, and player development, right? So I know in the baseball world, that's one of the things that I'm kind of looking forward to about this is rosters are getting trimmed down, so you have less spots for the best players. And you can't just go out and pay for whoever you want. You got to go recruit them, and then you got to get guys in your program and keep them and develop them. I think if baseball gets cut down to 34, there's going to be a lot of really good players going. You're going to see, like, to me, I think you're going to see more of the UTSAs, the Murray States.
They're going to get way better.
Yeah, and you're just going to see, in a postseason where, baseball is baseball, but now the talent level, even from a 4 seed in a regional, is better than it ever has been. But just because the players are kind of filtering down that way, I think college baseball is coming for more parity. I don't know about college football. The roster limits, I don't think will have that great of an impact. Like you're going to probably see players 70 to 85 on a roster, maybe going to look other places, but it won't be the top 40 players on the roster, which is, the guys that are going to be on the field for the most snaps. But yeah, again, all this stuff comes out. People are already looking for workarounds. People are already trying to cut deals late at night to get them ahead of this deadline. But we don't know what's going to happen until the lawsuits start coming out and who's going to win these lawsuits.
There's going to be a lot more lawsuits coming too.
Yeah.
This is not over.
But the difference is this is coming from a court, the judicial system, right? Whereas the lawsuits previously were player or entity against the NCAA.
But you know what I fear, Brauny? It's not a bad thing for the players, but more money for the players, because I don't think anything changed other than now there's another revenue stream for players. What's changed is, they have to go through a clearinghouse. But if Subway, probably a bad example, if any company here in town.
Subway.
Yeah, I just thought about their first spokesperson.
Oh, yeah.
Had to take a detour. A detour. So, but
we're going to talk about some house parties in Los Angeles next, or what?
No. I think we'll pass on that. But if the school is giving you the revenue, and still yet you have these NIL deals on top of it, right?
Yeah, and I think what the goal of that obviously was to get NIL back. I don't even know if you can say back, because it was never the functionality of NIL was never what it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
Right. What it was and what it was supposed to be were two different things. They're working to, I think this clearinghouse deal is to get it to actual name, image, and likeness. But here's the biggest issue with that is you got to push it through this Deloitte clearinghouse, right?
Mm-hmm.
And any deal over $600 has to be reviewed. You're adding more bureaucracy to this process. And then how can the government or some of the clearinghouse tell us at TexAgs or the local car dealership or the local restaurant how much money an appearance is worth? We're a privately owned company. Like, how can you?
We can decide what we pay.
Right. So I think there's a potential lawsuit coming. I don't think that TexAgs is going to stamp their name on it. Like, we're not going to be the ones that do this. I don't think. But somebody will.
As long as you have the portal, and you're always going to have the portal now.
That's where they should have. That's where you
fix this entire thing.
The player movement the fluidity of the player movement is the biggest issue.
Yes.
I don't mind, like, unlimited transfers, all that kind of stuff. I understand what the precedent is, and I don't know that you can put the genie back in the bottle. But just go back to the old rules, where if you transfer, you sit for a year, and then making your NIL.
Maybe you don't lose a year of eligibility, but you have to sit out a year. You see what I'm saying?
No.
You have to sit out a year, but you have to play your 4 seasons in 5 years, right?
Yeah.
Maybe in that situation, if you transfer, you still have to sit out, but it doesn't count against you on the 5-year clock.
Your clock, okay. Yeah, but and I guess that would help with the earning potential of the player. They couldn't bring you to court and say you've killed my earning potential as a college athlete because you haven't taken a year away from them. That's another interesting part about this is the back pay, like how that number was come up, how that's going to be distributed arbitrarily. Like, how much money is Johnny Manziel owed? You know what I'm saying?
And would he be penalized because people know he was getting paid anyway?
I know, like it's all crazy, but you just added more and more layers of government to something, and I don't know that I've ever seen the government run efficiently enough where I have confidence that adding more layers through the government in anything is going to make this a lot easier.
There should be 2- and 3-year deals. That's how all deal structure should be 2- and 3-year deals. Unless you're a junior or senior, unless you're a senior, then you can sign a 1-year deal. That's because the reason we don't see this in pro sports is because there's contracts.
Sure. And so I think the next level that they go to with this is making the players employees.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can sign them for multiple year deals like you do employees.
Yeah.
But, are the players going to be incentivized somehow to sign a 3-year deal? Like, okay, David Nuño, we want you to come play football at Texas A&M. Here's your 3-year deal, and we're going to structure it where in year 3 is where you're going to get 60% of that total salary. We're just going to keep giving you pay increases, which I think that was my idea from the get-go. Like, how do you curtail all this stuff? How do you clean up the portal? You can even keep the portal rules how they are. But again, this isn't possible. You can't do this. But if you could, I would like to see where a player cannot touch 1 cent of their NIL dollars until they've been on campus for 24 months. Now, after that 24 months is up, or during that 24 months, you can accrue as much money as you can. Like, you can just put it into like a basically a savings, a vault. And at 24 months, you get to open that vault and you can take it all out. But you have to stay at that school for 24 months. If you transfer, that clock starts over and you lose all access to that money. You can't do that.
No.
Because somebody's going to sue and say, well, I'm owed that money. Like, you can't just keep it from me. But they have to do something to keep the kids, incentivize the kids to stay where they're at.
Well, and
other than you want to grow the biggest tree, biggest, tallest tree, you don't take it and dig it up a year after you planted it and put it somewhere else. And then a year later, dig it up, plant it somewhere else.
Yep.
You let the roots grow where they're at. And I think what we've learned so far, at least in college football, if you go look at the rosters, especially the two deep at Ohio State, at Texas, there's got these teams that were in the playoff last year, Notre Dame. Most of their depth chart are homegrown players. So I think that there's still something. I think the main part of roster management in college football is still recruiting the right kids out of high school and developing them in your program and in your culture.
By the way, they still got to fix the window, the transfer portal window, and doing it in January, which I think that's what Kirby Smart is in favor for, even though his teams typically are playing late and it would affect him quite a bit. I like more of the April-May window. But I think you're screwed either way. Either way, your team is screwed.
Yeah, there's not like a great time in the calendar where you're going, okay, the portal should be open now. This is when it makes the most sense. There's always going to be hurdles to clear with the portal and trying to get your roster together for the next year. I like where it's currently at. December, January is a pretty good time for it. There's as good of a time as there is. But you're kind of beholden to the academic calendar, right? And we talked about this. It's like Bucky comes on campus and starts trying to build a brand new roster in March. Now, the beauty of that is he's got from March until July, August to get it finalized.
Right.
Where Michael Earley is going through the same stuff. Now, he's not having to flip a whole roster, but just baseball, because of the academic calendar, these guys, these coaches, they're going to get June and half of July, and then they've got to have a roster ready to go for the fall.
Yep.
And, oh, by the way, they still don't know. We should get some clarity this week from this House settlement on roster limits. I know that said they had to be down to 34 by December 1st on the baseball side.
I think some of it is going to be grandfathered, though.
But how much? And who's gonna have access to being grandfathered into these roster limitations? Yep. Because if you grandfather some of them in but you have to be cut down to 34 by December 1st, why would you go into a fall on the baseball side with 45 or 50 guys on your roster? You're going to have to axe 16 kids at semester. Like, to me, that's bad business. And so we still, I know that like A&M baseball is potentially bringing in a high school player today, one of the top uncommitted high school players in the country on a visit. But how do you know if you can even sign them?
Right.
So everybody's in a lot of tight spots right now, and I'm still, even with the House settlement coming out, I would, if I were coaching, I don't like this as part of like a human nature, like human being type of trait, but if my job is to get the best players and win games, I'm still going to promise as grandiose of a scenario as possible, and then if all that gets chopped off by the House settlement,
it's on them.
I say, hey, you know what? I was going to do all this, but I can't now.
Yeah. Hey, it's TexAgs Live. We're presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. Let's go around the room quickly because we've got a guest coming up, Amanda Christovich, who's a sports business reporter. She'll join us at 8:20 to talk a little bit about this NIL and whatever questions we might have. If you want to be a part of the conversation, call us up, 979-693-1150. That's the Buppy's Catering Hotline. Or you can text that number as well, 979-693-1150. We go around the room left to right. And behind the glass is Luke Evangelist. He already said something today. Luke, good morning.
Hey, good morning, David. How are you?
Give us some thoughts.
How about Alex Caruso tying a playoff career high last night, going for 20 points, 4 of 8 from 3. He also had 3 rebounds and 1 assist as the Oklahoma City Thunder tied that series. So, David, is he your number 1 Aggie in the pro, or is that still going to Mike Evans? Would you say he's 1A, 1B?
Why would I pick between kids? Right? Like, why am I going to say Christian or Cruz or Eiler or Annalise over everybody else? I'm not going to do that, right? I love them all. And I think AC yesterday got robbed of 2 points. They called him on a charge in the second quarter, which maybe was a charge, but I thought it was a bucket. But I love what he's doing. Is Quentin Jackson actually on the bench? Can you see him?
Yeah, you can see him. So he's in, street clothes.
Okay.
He's, not technically on the playoff roster, but he is on the Indiana Pacers roster. He's got that 2-way contract,
Yep.
So if they win a ring, he's getting a ring. But no, he's just out there throwing fits left and right, making sure he looks good.
All right, let's go to the Angry Elephant News and Social Center. What's up, brother?
Not much.
What's going on with you?
Not a whole lot.
Mr. Nygren's got some updates for us.
So this week, the Aggie track and field team competes for the national championship starting on Wednesday. The men's team will have 11 individuals participate, as well as both relay teams. And the women's team also has 7 individuals, as well as both relay teams participating, with Jasmine Montgomery and Cameron Dixon competing in both the 100-meter and the 200 meters.
Hopefully we get a national championship and a bunch of titles. Continue on, please.
Bucky McMillan retains Shane Sinnen, who was a graduate assistant under former head coach Buzz Williams. Sinnen will be promoted by Coach McMillan to assistant director of operations.
You were commenting on his awesome shirt.
H-Town, baby. The Stros playing good ball.
Yeah.
They are.
You know what? I got to admit, Isak Paredes hasn't been a world beater, but he's been better than I thought he would be. And then when you dive into his metrics, one thing he does, he hits a bunch of balls in the air to the pull side, but he doesn't hit them very far.
Yeah.
So where do you want to play that guy? If he hits a bunch of balls in the air to the pull side, but doesn't hit them 420 feet, what stadium should he play half his games in?
Minute Maid Park.
Dyken Park.
Oh, that's right.
Right? Because he only has to hit them 315 feet.
Yeah.
And he's probably been the second best hitter on a team that doesn't hit, but he's still been better than I thought he would be. The Astros can really pitch.
Yeah.
They can really pitch. So I don't know. I went into this season with a lot of trepidation about them continuing their dominance in the AL West, and they got a chance to win the division again, and we're almost to the All-Star break.
Yeah. All right, we'll hit a break here. We'll come back, talk a little NIL and the House settlement. Right now, though, if you want some mouth-watering specials and dishes, you got to go to 1775.
Smoked meats, baby.
You're a big fan of the smoked meats, just like OB.
Not as much as Olin.
He likes the smoked meats.
He does. He loves smoked meats.
Do you like Brazos Spuds?
Probably.
Yeah, I think you would.
Homegrown potatoes.
Brisket Philly cheesesteak sandwich.
Listen, you put cheesesteak, their brisket in cheesesteak form. You put it over top of a horse turd. I'd fight through it.
Raspberry chipotle pork belly burnt ends.
I love burnt ends.
Yeah. Rotating desserts, by the way, to satisfy any sweet tooth out there. It is Texas-sized flavor, the best way. It's 1775, open Thursday through Saturday, 11 a.m. until they're sold out. Call them up, 979-492-6241, or visit them at 1775bbq.com. And we're back. It's TexAgs Live. We're presented by David Gardner's Jewelers Rollo Insurance Studio. The Go Hour, presented by The Warehouse at CC Creations. Let's go to the Buppy's Catering Hotline. That's where we are joined by Amanda Christovich from Front Office Sports. She's a sports business reporter. Amanda, good morning. How are you? What's going on in the background over there? Good time. Amanda, are you there? This is the best interview I've done today. Amanda, this is your fault. Amanda? All right. Guys at the zone, try to get her on there, please. See if you can get her back or call her back. She talked when you picked up the phone. Okay, Emily, thank you. Just call her back. All right, we'll try to get her on. I have some questions from somebody who's actually read through, I think it's 72 pages. She actually read through them. I didn't read through it. I read a couple reports. I read her report. I read Ross Dellinger's report. I read CBS's report, which probably ended up being 72 pages as well. So I should have just read the 72 pages. But I read through those and just to kind of get a feel. And look, there's a lot that I think I know about it. And there's plenty that we're trying to figure out. And I still don't know if these are legitimate guardrails or if it's just here's a little bit of makeup on this pig, right? And that's going to be the big question. Will this actually curtail some of the behind-the-scene things that we've been seeing, or will it end up being exactly what they set out to be? Or is this just step one in several? Let's go back to the Buppy's Catering Hotline. Amanda Christovich is on there this time. Amanda, good morning. Amanda? About to quit. Pretty much about to quit. Amanda. Everybody else can hear me, right? You guys can hear me. Amanda, I'm just going to interview myself real quick. What are the strongest legal challenges of this? I don't know. Emily, just talk to her. Let her know that when you put her on hold, I'll be right there. Anyway, there we go. I can hear her. She can't hear me. Maybe there's something to do. I don't know. Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we just go to the Angry Elephant News and Social Center while we figure things out? And because maybe we need to send her a Zoom link or a Zoom phone number, Luke, to get her on that way. Because if she can't hear me on the phone lines, I'm not going to keep doing this on the air. All right, Reese.
So going from talking about football to football, the Texas A&M soccer team unveiled their 2025 SEC slate, including 5 games at Ellis Field. They will open their 14th SEC campaign at Ellis Field on Friday, September 12th with a match against Georgia. A&M's meeting versus in-state rival Texas is scheduled for Thursday, October 2nd in the Brazos Valley. They also host Arkansas, Missouri, and Kentucky. The A&M's road matchups include Auburn, Tennessee, Oklahoma, LSU, and South Carolina. The Aggies conference slate features 7 of the top 9 teams from the 2024 standings, and 7 of the SEC opponents finished in the top 50 of the RPI last year. The Aggies open their 2025 campaign Thursday, August 14th, when they host the Baylor Bears.
All right, we're going to do this. I think we're just going to send Amanda a Zoom number, and we'll try to get her on the other hand because I guess there's some problems. Milliken Reserve Time farm-to-table community in College Station. They features homes, trails, farms, and wide open spaces. And they have a mission to build a healthy community around nature. If you haven't been there, you're missing out. Great place to go hang out with your family. Enjoy the outdoors where you can go hiking, you can go biking, you can go canoeing, kayaking. They have equestrian trails there. They have the evening yoga. They got the summer camps. They got the music festivals. They have it all there and have every animal you can imagine there, from the white-tailed deer, the songbirds, the rabbits, the turtles. And homeowners at Milliken Reserve sharing a legacy of conservation, which means generation after generation, you're coming back to that pristine countryside place. An enduring resource and a place to come together to relax and connect, to explore and discover. Again, you get to connect with your family. The place is Milliken Reserve, the website, millikenreserve.com. That website again, millikenreserve.com. And I think we're back. TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers Rollo Insurance. Studio Go Hour, presented by the Warehouse at CC Creations. We're trying to see if the Bubby's Catering Hotline is working. Amanda Christovich joining us from Front Office Sports. Amanda, do you got me?
I do. Can you hear me?
Yes, I do. Thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate you bearing with us during this technical difficulties. How are things going there at, do you say NACDA or do you say NACDA?
It's NACDA, and it's pretty. There's a lot of energy. Let's put it that way. A few thousand athletic department officials from all over the country, as well as other industry executives. The hotel lobby bar was overflowing last night, to say the least. And you can imagine what everybody was talking about: house settlement, what the future of the industry is going to look like, and like who read the settlement on Friday night, and how their jobs are going to change as a result of it.
Amanda, I feel like this is a step in the right direction, but then there's a part of me that's like, is it really though? Are we just doing something to do something, or is some real tangible good coming out of this?
I think a step in the right direction is the way a lot of folks are describing it, especially those who are more on the advocacy side. I mean, look, getting $2.8 billion to current or former athletes who were not able to profit off of NIL for 2021, that's a huge step in the right direction. Sharing revenue with players, the revenue that they have generated, the billions of dollars in, media rights revenue, ticket sales, allowing schools to share that revenue with players, that's a step in the right direction. I think where the questions come in are related to whether or not the roster limits issue is going to harm, a lot of athletes, whether or not this new NIL clearinghouse is going to be, frankly, legal in court if and when someone challenges it. And, ultimately, whether or not, one day we're going to engage in collective bargaining, which is a much more airtight way to adjudicate college sports than a settlement.
All right. So do you think that's in the future? And if it is in the future, how far in the future is student athletes becoming employees of the university? And if that all happens, I'm asking the longest question ever, does that mean some term limits, some contracts where they have to stay at the school for X amount of years?
I think, look, the sky's the limit when it comes to collective bargaining, right? So the earlier part of your question about when this is going to happen, there's currently one major federal court case that would get all Division I athletes to be named employees if it were successful, but it's going to take several years to get that, winding through the courts. It's been a few years already, and it's just moving like Johnson, the NCAA is moving at like a snail's pace, to say the least. And meanwhile, the NCAA and power conferences are spending millions of dollars trying to lobby Congress to pass a law saying the players are not employees. So I would say, in court, if we see this issue go through the courts, it's going to have to go all the way up to the Supreme Court. And so that could take like 4 or 5 years. But if the NCAA and power conferences had their way, there wouldn't be any collective bargaining because athletes would not be deemed employees. You can't have one without the other, or you can't have collective bargaining without athletes being employees, if that makes sense. So even though that's the solution, because it would allow for any sorts of limits on, the reason that free agency limits are legal in the pros, the reason salary caps are legal is because they're collectively bargained with players' unions. So that solution is one that the NCAA is fighting and spending millions of dollars fighting against and literally trying to get the federal government to prevent. So it may never happen, but it is the solution that every pro league uses. And it's the solution that, even some power conference athletic directors like Tennessee's have said is the way to go moving forward.
Talking to Amanda Christovich here on TexAgs Live. All right, Amanda, what's going to happen to the Olympic sports at the schools that value football and basketball? I know a place like A&M, apparently, the future is they want to keep every sport possible. But how competitive can these programs be if most of the money is going to go to football and basketball?
I mean, look, I think that currently most of the money is going to football and basketball anyway. So I think that, Olympic sports athletes obviously are going to get a much, much, much smaller portion of the revenue sharing dollars, probably less than 5% for all Olympic sports in an athletic tournament, right? But that's not necessarily different from the way that, things are kind of broken up now. I mean, football and men's basketball do fund a lot of Olympic sports, but a lot of the investment goes into the sports that generate revenue. That's why women's basketball, for example, really wanted that unit system during March Madness, that prize money system, because it's a financial incentive to invest in their programs. So, I think that schools are going to have to make a decision about, especially the power conference schools that are raking in 9 figures a year. Do they really want to say they can't afford competitive Olympic sports? I think this provides them with an opportunity to get creative and look for new revenue streams and ways to get programs like baseball and softball, for example, to make more money than they ever have, gymnastics to make more money than they ever have. And if you do that, then the revenue sharing dollars will come naturally.
Amanda, talk to me a little bit about these roster limits again for a moment. This is going to be all the talk before the settlement was it was going to be grandfathered in. Inside of the language that you read, is that still the case for most of these schools?
So basically, the language of the settlement allows schools to grandfather in current or future college athletes who have received or been, quote, assured that they would get a roster spot, right? So an athlete who is a senior in high school and who just graduated but was told they would get a roster spot, they could be designated as one of these athletes to get grandfathered in. But the schools aren't required to grandfather them in. It's all up to their own discretion. And so a lot of folks are concerned that even though the schools have the ability now to get these athletes back on their programs and on their teams, they just won't. A lot of these players went into the transfer portal as a result of losing their roster spots. So technically, they're allowed to go back to their original school if their original school will take them back. But the original school may have found someone else to give a scholarship to, right? Or they just don't have room, or they don't want the player, even if the player can be grandfathered. So no one really knows at this point how many of these athletes are going to get their spots back. And while that is technically the market, that was a legal argument, roster spots are never guaranteed. So to guarantee that the athletes would be grandfathered is not really what the market says. I think for a lot of these players, the damage has already been done and they can't undo it.
Amanda, last thing for you. The President Trump yesterday played golf with Greg Sankey and the Notre Dame athletic director. I know that he wants to help. Is something you think these meetings, I guess he had one with Nick Saban a couple of weeks back, is something going to come out of all of this?
I think it might eventually, but I do want to stress that when it comes to the White House, they are a lot less further along in terms of figuring out how they want to get involved in this issue and if they want to get involved in this issue versus advising or allowing Congress to do so, because Congress has been working on this. They are not very far along at all in terms of making any decisions about the way into college sports that they want to take. That's not to say they don't care, but it is to say that, the reports about a commission, these meetings, it's all a lot more exploratory, I would say, than some of the reports have led folks to believe. The last time I spoke with sources about this, I think 2 weeks ago, they were sort of cautioning me to say, it's not to say the White House isn't interested, because the White House is interested, but they just have made no decisions yet on if or how they're going to get involved in the college sports advocacy issue.
Amanda, we appreciate your time. Enjoy the event this week, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you. Amanda Christovich, Front Office Sports, does good work there. Appreciate her time here on TexAgs Live. We'll hit a break. We'll come back, one final segment with Brauny in the Go Hour. Then we're going to talk to Chip Patterson a little bit later from CBS Sports and the Cover 3 podcast. Looking forward to talking to him. Dr. John Thornton going to join us. He's going into the Southwest Conference Hall of Fame. He'll join us at 9:35. In the 10 o'clock hour, Billy Liucci will be in studio to talk about all these things, the big recruiting weekend. And, in fact, I'll ask Brauny about some of the baseball notes that came out of the weekend as well. All right, we'll hit a break here. Right now, farming and ranching families think differently. is not just working for today, you're building for generations to come. That's why when you build your land, you're thinking about the future. You're not thinking about the right now. And especially when you have a land, it takes time, right? It takes time to cultivate that land. And that's why Heritage Films created Farm and Ranch Films. They document all types of stories from cattle ranches in Texas to agricultural legacies across America. They aren't simply documentaries. They're cinematic time capsules that capture your unique relationship with your land. Whether you're thinking in 20-year cycles or 100, Farm and Ranch Films is going to preserve that wisdom, the work ethic, and the values that make your agriculture, your family so special. Your legacy deserves that level of craftsmanship. What you need to do is check out the website, yourheritagefilm.com, yourheritagefilm.com, and click on the Farm and Ranch Film section or call them up 713-893-8341, 713-893-8341. It's Heritage Films. Let's talk a little Snaps clothing. David Nuño here, and I love wearing Snaps clothing everywhere. I've got the flannel on right now. You've seen me in the Tailgater collection with the A&M gear. It is fantastic. If you see me around town with my sons, Christian and Cruz, they've got a bunch of Snaps gear. When they have big games for Consol, they wear nice clothes, so they wear their Snap stuff. And I'm telling you, with baseball season here, let's all kind of go looking stylish and fit to the games there at Olsen wearing the Snaps clothing. As a reminder, they are the only official licensed Texas A&M Pearl Snaps maker out there. Their Tailgater collection is built for game day with breathable, moisture-wicking fabrics to keep you comfortable while you rep your Aggies in style. Now, whether you're watching the game from home or maybe you're in attendance, you're tailgating, whatever it may be, you got to make sure you head to snapsclothing.com to see everything they have to offer. It is fashionable, it is awesome, and you're going to love it. We are doers here on TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. The Go Hour, presented by The Warehouse at CC Creations. Why'd you give me that look, Brauny?
I mean, low-hanging fruit, but nice work. Radio show host.
low-hanging fruit when you've gone to the same joke during 1775 for two straight shows?
It's more that joke is more aimed at Olin Buchanan.
Well,
because I know if Olin is driving or however, if he's listening to the show and we start talking about
chuckles.
Oh yeah, for sure,
definitely chuckles. So I believe it was Friday when Brauninger committed to Texas A&M, and then his teammate Jake Dreyer over the weekend, who was Florida Atlantic's best hitter until he got injured. Talk to me a little bit about him. He was batting, what, 428?
And his OPS numbers were really gaudy last year. 1 year of eligibility remaining. Flower Mound Marcus product, so knows Caden Sorrell.
Yeah.
This kid, when you kind of look through his cut-ups, the bat-to-ball skill is really, really high. And how that fits with this A&M roster going forward is, they swung and missed a lot this year. So you're adding a guy that does not swing and miss very often. And there's probably more sock in the bat than you think. Especially here at Texas A&M where the ball's going to fly most of the time. But he gives you a chance to, and I think not only him, but Cliff Pennington as well. And I know that one of Cliff Pennington's philosophies is play the whole game. Be able to play every element of the game. Obviously, if you roll out there one day and you hit a bunch of 2-3 run homers, that's sick. That's awesome. You're going to win the game. But what happens when you ain't doing that?
Right.
You got to play the whole game. Well, I think Jake Dreyer gives you a chance to play the whole game. And when you combine his skill set with, you get Sorrell back, I'm leaning toward, if you made me pick today, Sorrell's going to come back. If you combine that with Sorrell and Terrence Kill II, that outfield, you're going, all right, all those guys can play the whole game. You don't want Sorrell bunting, and you probably really don't want Sorrell stealing bases. Keep that guy on his feet as much as possible. Let him try to hit the 3-run homers because we know he can and can do it at a high rate. But you're looking at that outfield going, all right, that's pretty salty. That is of, I don't know if it's the best in the SEC, but it's of upper caliber in the SEC, which means you're going to be one of the better ones in the country. And I think that's the goal whenever you put rosters together in this league, and whether you're Mike Earley or any other head coach, you're going, all right, I'm going to put together a roster that can get us to Omaha. Whether we get there or not, obviously that is determined by how well we play, how healthy we stay, and then, a fair bit of luck when you get into the postseason. You got to have some luck go your way to get to Omaha. But can this roster that we are trying to put together, does it have the talent and the pieces to get us there? And I think that's kind of how they're going through their roster management right now.
What do you make of the two SEC teams making the College World Series, which is, by the way, a fourth of the field? Is still pretty darn good, considering the 13 that made it and what a lot of people gloating, if you will.
Well, I thought what my eyes tell me was that the three best teams that Texas A&M played this year were Arkansas, LSU, and Tennessee. To me, that's what my eye said. Those were the best three teams that I saw Texas A&M play. And I didn't think Arizona was very good. Now Arizona's going to Omaha. So again, you don't have to be playing the best ball in February and March. You just got to get hot at the right time, and you got to have enough pieces that if those pieces get hot, you can get to Omaha. And that's what we were talking about with A&M, right? Didn't play well this year, but if they got in, there were enough pieces where you're going, if they get hot, this team can go all the way to the College World Series. And so I think that's why the Missouri series was so disappointing. But yeah, I still, going into the postseason, I thought Arkansas was the best team, and they're certainly playing like that right now.
Yeah, and Vitello, I thought really classy. Was it yesterday, Saturday, whenever it was, talking to Van Horn, and just you could tell that he has a lot of respect for that program.
Yeah, and who doesn't have respect for Dave Van Horn? He's been there a long time and done it the right way. And we said this during the season that this was going to be their best shot to win a national championship, and just so happens that the field's kind of breaking where, in terms of raw talent, LSU, Oregon State's really good. I watched that series against Florida State. Florida State had a tremendously talented roster, and Oregon State just pounded them, especially yesterday. So, and then a lot of it has to do with how you're going to play in that ballpark, which Charles Schwab Field plays very different than a lot of SEC ballparks, and it goes back to that point. Can you play the whole game?
Yeah.
If you've got a bunt, if you've got a steal, how are you on cuts and relays? Whenever you can't hit the ball over the fence and erase all the stuff that, all the elements of the game that have to be played, hitting the home runs erases those. when you can't hit the home run as often, can you play the whole game? I think this Arkansas team can.
So what's the next steps for A&M transfer portal-wise?
Well, keep up with our transfer portal tracker on the site. We've been updating it. I've been updating it just about daily. They're bringing in a lot of pitchers this week, and I think that's where you're going to see them index the most on this current roster. I think maybe one more outfielder. They got to go find somebody that can catch. They're bringing in a kid from Prosper out of the high school ranks, Luke Billings, really talented behind the dish, but he's kind of like he can do so many different things. Like if they want him to pitch, he could. He could play the outfield. So I think you got to go try to find, and that's difficult. It's got to find another catcher because you have Bear returning, right? So you got to go find the right guys, that second catcher. They had Chris Hakopian in from Maryland, the shortstop, just left yesterday. The number one transfer portal shortstop. They got to go find that. Again, the MLB draft, like what does it do to your roster? You don't know. I heard some stuff yesterday that would maybe Ben Royo's coming back. I still think he's going to get picked and signed.
Yeah.
Heard some stuff yesterday that made me believe that's maybe more on the table than I thought, him coming back. So, but again, like what does the draft do to these high schoolers that you kind of plan on coming in, at least providing quality depth? What do the roster limits do to guys that were toward the end of last year's roster that you wanted to come back?
Yep.
How does that affect your ability to retain some of those guys? There's just so much in the air right now, and it's not an easy job for Mike Earley, Caleb Longley, Cliff Pennington, and Jason Kelly to try to figure out what they can do and then how to manage their decisions within those parameters, because the parameters still aren't set.
Sure. We've got about a minute 20 left here. What about the recruiting weekend from Coach Elko?
Really good. Really, really good. And I thought the creative media that came out, and they completely kind of switched up what they had been doing in previous years. I thought it was a fresh perspective on that. It looked really good. It seems like it was a big hit for both the kids and their families. That is, you have to do that. And I actually wrote my recruiting article last week, and the opening line to it was a quote from Andy Bernard from The Office. Like, I'm always looking one step ahead, like a carpenter that makes stairs. You have to be that way in this recruiting game right now. And so I was really encouraged by A&M's just completely, they did such a good job, very well thought out. They switched it up, and the visuals that came out of it were quality. And then, obviously, they did a great job with those kids and their families. Got Aaron Gregory to shut it down, got Jonathan Hatton to shut it down. That's as big as adding any commitment.
Well, and when they say shut it down, that they're not taking calls.
We're not taking calls, not taking visits, and those are probably your two best players in the class.
Cool. Thank you very much, Brauny. Appreciate you. All right, here's the plan for the rest of the show. Chip Patterson coming up next. People have been asking to get him on the program. We've got him from the Cover 3 podcast and CBS Sports. Dr. John Thornton going to be joining us in studio 9:35. And as I mentioned, Billy Liucci for the entire 10 o'clock hour. You are listening to TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. And we're back. TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. Appreciate everybody listening in this morning. We've been trying to get this guy on the show for a while. We've come up in several meetings, reached out to him. Very easy to get him on. Chip Patterson joining us on the Buppy's Catering Hotline. You can check out his work at CBS Sports and the Cover 3 podcast. Chip, good morning, sir.
Good morning. How are we doing?
Doing great, man. Thanks for making a few minutes. So I think we'll start things off with the obvious topic, the House settlement. And it's weird. Like, we've been talking about it coming for, it feels like forever, but I know it's been kind of like slowly coming. And now that it's here, I'm like, did we really figure anything out? So I'll start that off with you. Like, do you feel like we're moving in the right direction for college sports?
No, but we're not moving in the wrong direction. Okay. We've done like a little sidestep. We've changed the rules of the game. We've created sort of a new environment. And honestly, man, I think back to when NIL was first put in place. Because when NIL was first approved, it was just sort of dumped onto the leadership of college sports without any kind of guidance, without any kind of guardrails, without any kind of explanation of what this is going to be. And in a similar way with the House settlement, we have a world that many thought would never come, which is the school directly paying players. And I don't know if that's a win, but it's not necessarily a loss. All we have done is we have done another sidestep. We have created a new set of problems to solve. And so, if you were going to go sort of like big picture philosophical here, all right? So I thought the NIL did not address one of the ways that things did not connect, because schools are making so much money off the media rights payments. And the players through NIL were getting money, but not from the media rights payments for which their image is being used to generate millions and billions of dollars. So philosophically, the idea that a cut of media rights revenue, a long way to get there, but that some of that money is going to the players does make a connection. But big picture philosophical stuff doesn't get down to the nuts and bolts of these coaches and these administrators who are having to figure out how much money goes to each sport, how much money goes to each player, and trying to make sure that you're not overstepping your bounds and not making any mistakes that are going to end up being costly on the field. That I have heard some confidence, because remember, this was is it going to get passed? Is it not going to get approved? Is it going to get approved? Is it not going to get approved? When that was going back and forth, before we got to this moment, administrators said, look, we have already put in the work so that if this goes through July 1, we are ready to go. We have made the financial considerations. We have it inside our budget. So I am at least confident that when July 1 hits, the college sports world is not going to collapse. But to answer your question, this is not a step forward. It is not a step back. It is just a sidestep, a new reality, a new set of problems for everybody to solve.
See, I appreciate the step, but in my mind, I'm like, but without a real voice in the room, a real voice, not just several voices, I don't know when and if. Like, it's just going to be a constant different version of a wild, wild west until we have like an entity with actual power and they do become employees, the athletes.
Right, because the employment leads to contracts, which are going to be, we hope, much more tightened and much more standard from school to school or conference to conference. If, one thing that we have discussed on the Cover 3 podcast a lot, to the point where I almost feel like it's tired, but with public and private universities who are in different states, who all have to adhere to all those different states, maybe there is an answer where you are an employee of a conference, and that is a way that you can be able to sign these deals. But what does that mean for transfers within a conference? And can you limit players transferring within a conference? So many legal humps to get through along the way. I am with you, at least it sounds like I'm with you, that employment and contracts, being able to buy out of a contract, being able to have some sort of compensation, those are things that I think will be able to alleviate some of the concerns. And the concerns are the concerns are the player who's going to go to 7 schools in 5 years, who's going to just be cashing tickets and continuing to re-up the market value. And I'm not going to single anybody out, but we have seen even in this short NIL era, some of these players, they bounce around from school to school to school. They were a highly rated prospect coming out of high school. So therefore, they've got the size or the athleticism or the measurables to at least convince a school. And we normally see the caliber of programs dip as it goes along, but that's not the college sports experience in my eyes.
Yeah, I've seen guys in the last couple of months be at 3 different schools, right? They asked for out of their letter of intent, and then like it's the wild, wild west. But if you could fix anything, to me, it could be as simple, and they can't fix it because the courts have already spoken. But if you fix the portal, right, then I think NIL and the value of the players, then we're not going to be constantly checking to see who's going to pay me more every 6 minutes, right? Like if the portal were to be handled differently, but you can't fix it.
I like 1 portal window over 2 portal windows. I like the American Football Coaches Association proposal of having that 1 portal window be almost in that sort of mid-January standpoint. I think that you would have completed the postseason for most of the schools, and anyone who's left, that's just what happens when you're playing this deep into the year. You're not the first sports team to have a little bit of a slow start because of the success that you'd had the previous season. 1 portal window somewhere in mid-January, let's say after the quarterfinals of the college football playoff, and allow that to be the opportunity for all the rosters to shift around. I think that helps our coaching carousel. I think that helps the commitment to the postseason from top to bottom. You will still have players opt out of bowl games. You will still have players threaten to opt out of playoff games, I'm sure, as we continue to go down this line. But ultimately, the 2 portal windows creates an environment. A power conference head coach is, he's not the only one, but the idea that, it's free agency every 6 months. Every 6 months, we got a new free agency window. We've got to go back to the table and renegotiate with all these guys. I think that's unhealthy, and that speaks to one thing that you're looking at. So I support what the American Football Coaches Association did coming out of their convention. 1 portal window instead of 2. And instead of having it be smack dab in the middle of December, let's have it be in January. There's a lot of someone's going to come and say, but the academic calendar, buddy, our problems are way bigger than the academic calendar right now. We can figure that out later. This is something about the sustainability of the sport moving forward.
Couldn't you Zoom your classes and I don't know. I feel like there's many things.
Most of them Zooming their classes anyway, like a lot of online classes. So I'm not. Look. I know how funny it is to hear the North Carolina grad say something about don't worry about classes. I get it. I totally understand. But I'm telling you that for the sport as a whole, I would like to see not the renegotiation every 6 months. I just don't think that's healthy.
How often do you get asked about Bill Belichick being a North Carolina guy?
My favorite conversations are actually the ones from people outside of sports. Right? Because he's broken out. He's broken contained. It's everywhere. Like my favorite conversation is with my best friend's mom, right? Who I see at the grocery store, who's like, I want to hear what she has to say, right? But then also make sure that I, measure my conversation. So it is basically daily, but that's just kind of where we're at right now with that situation.
Chip, how is it that Bill Belichick has become kind of like Deion Sanders in that it's such a curiosity? And this is a guy that was so buttoned up, so detail-oriented, so kind of quiet with the media. I'm not saying that that's changed, but he's now a tabloid guy. And he's like, there's like a shock value to his whole personality with, I don't know, it's just weird for him to be in that same kind of, people are wondering, how long will he last in North Carolina? Will he even last a season? Will he be there too? Like, it's weird.
Well, I will say I do think he's going to be there a season because I think that he doesn't enjoy the tabloid stuff. Somebody else in his very close personal life might enjoy the tabloid stuff a little bit more, but I think he likes football. Yeah. He gets around the football coaches at the spring meetings and his juices get flowing again. He gets in there and he starts to really think about roster construction. He is, with this North Carolina roster, building a group that it's going to really put his coaching skills to the test because what he's basically done is applied something that comes from his old mentor, Bill Parcells. Bill Parcells used to say, I can teach you football. I can't teach size. And so that's what we were going to have 70 players on the North Carolina football roster that were not on there for Mac Brown's last season. And if you go and you look at them, a majority of these guys are players who are tall, who are big, who are long. But why did those other power conferences let them go? Maybe those other power conference teams didn't think that they could play or they could play at that level. And so, this is something that's really going to he's really going to have his football theories tested that I can teach you football. I can't teach you big. So let's get a bunch of big guys that need to be coached up. I think that's fascinating. And one other piece of this, which is drawing some of the morbid fascination, speaks to the fact that the National Football League still rules our sports world. The NFL, my opinion, editorializing here, the NFL ran him out of the league. And I think that there's morbid curiosity coming from the NFL, that when things seem like they're the most chaotic, the people who seem to be reveling and enjoying the chaos more than anybody are the people from the NFL. So I don't know if that's burned bridges. I don't know if that's old Deflategate ghosts or what have you, but one of the reasons why it is such a big focus of fascination, I think, is coming from, like our nation's biggest sport, the National Football League, which ran him out. And they're like, oh, okay, Bill, look at the big brains on Bill. Let's see if Bill can make this thing happen. And I will say, again, as a North Carolina grad, if he can win the first ACC championship in 4 decades, well, then maybe Bill does have big brains and all the best ideas in the building. So we'll see.
All right, I'm going to ask you about a former ACC coach that you might have a recollection of, Mike Elko, our coach here at Texas A&M. Your thoughts on the program that he's building, considering year one success in some eyes outside of Texas A&M, right? I think here we looked at it as like, yeah, 8-4, 8-5 would have been great before the season started, but you were 7-1. But I still feel like he's got the building blocks. He's got the personnel to continue building. What do you think about his first couple years?
Okay, so the one thing about last season that I always want to go back to was the instability at quarterback, and that there just has to be an assumption that you were going to be able to take a step forward, because you compounded that with the injuries to the skill positions. It just started to level up in the way. I mean, that last game against Texas, where like the biggest prizes were still on the table in that rivalry game. Look, Texas couldn't move the ball either. You know, that was a 17-7 final, if I'm mistaken. Like, that was a spot where you're like, man, like Elko got these boys charged up for this huge home game. Defense is playing lights out against a really strong, well-coached, championship caliber Texas offense. And you just wish that you could move the ball, but you didn't have enough healthy bodies. And the quarterback had just been, in and out with Wegman and Reed. And so now I spin this thing forward, because you got a lot of experience back. I do believe, like, culture gets overused. I think Mike Elko is a culture plus. Like if everything's going to be a plus or minus, like the way that he instills things on a day-to-day basis, but also just the way that he's got those teams fired up for Saturdays is something that I think I saw starting when he was down the street in Durham. So if you get those steps forward with Reed, a full off season of being able to be in the system and prepare for that moment, if you go into the transfer portal, Texas A&M did, to try to reinforce some of the strength at the wide receiver and the skill positions, then now you start to be in a good position where you don't have to do anything that you didn't do before. You were in the hunt in November. Now it's about finishing. And I think that there's got to be something inside that locker room that's going to breed more confidence to say, like, okay, we were there. We know that we can go toe-to-toe with the best in this league. Now we just need to finish and take that last step to go forward and get to where we want to be, which is competing for the Southeastern Conference Championship, competing for spots in the college football playoff. So, Mike Elko, I see him as someone who, initially you looked at him as sort of like a defensive, mastermind. But, man, the way that he carries himself and the message that he delivers to the team, I still remain very impressed with that.
I want to go back to what you just said, of defensive mastermind, which is what made last season so perplexing. Yeah, you had some issues at quarterback, for sure. But the defense seemed to be the problem. Now he's got his hands all over this defense again. And, when we play these what-if games, Chip, like, if the defense takes a couple steps forward, then what? Like, you look at last season, they're in position outside of the Texas game, which was a lot closer. Like the Texas game, you score on 4th and 1, so it feels completely different. But if your defense can hold, Auburn, if your defense can hold South Carolina, USC, it's about the defense, right?
Yeah, the Auburn and the South Carolina games. I'm sure that those memories, unfortunately, are ringing with you and with your audience a lot more. But that was bad. That was bad to be able to let that thing slide. That's got to be a situation where you are just so much tighter You're just so much more buttoned up all the way through. You had the LSU win, and you know what? This might be another interesting challenge for Elko as he continues to build this thing. And I'm buying stock. If you can't hear me, I'm buying stock. There are going to be years with great success. There are going to be years with frustration. Like, maybe that's a great lesson about handling success. Because coming out of the LSU win, the way that comeback went, maybe that's that human nature right there where you got to work on making sure that this group is ready. The Duke team always had a chip on their shoulder, right? They were always punching up. They were always trying to prove somebody wrong. Texas A&M was riding real high once they got into the driver's seat. That's going to be a great lesson for the program. Each team is going to have to learn how to handle success. It's a good problem to have when you're trying to learn how to handle success. But now, you're bringing those two losses back to mind, and I got to wonder if maybe some of that was a little bit intangible as much as it was X's and O's.
Chip, let me ask you about a couple of their opponents before I let you go. Notre Dame, interesting team because I think a lot of teams on A&M's schedule, you got questions at quarterback. A lot of their opponents, the entire SEC, there are questions at quarterback for the most part. Notre Dame brings back 3/5 of their offensive line. They're always going to have a strong defense. What do you think about Notre Dame this year?
It's important to go back and remember how many season-ending injuries they had last year and still made it to the national title game. The fact that a lot of the young guys who maybe weren't starters on paper at the beginning of the year got a lot of snaps and are still going to be back. I was so impressed during that run for the Fighting Irish with the depth, like the program depth, competitive depth. When you go to the second, the third string by the end of the season, you're playing in college football playoff games against Penn State and still finding ways to be able to trust those guys on the line or at linebacker or in the secondary, all crucial spots on the field. And so that's kind of what I'm thinking with Notre Dame, that while we are going to have the transition from Riley Leonard to either CJ Carr or Kenny Minchie, that, we're going to be having everywhere else, maybe not as many questions. Thought the wide receivers took a step forward last year. You've got one of the best running backs in the country in Jeremiah Love. So Notre Dame absolutely is deserving of any kind of, anyone's national title conversation realistically needs to probably have about 6 or 7 teams in it, because there's not a single team up at the top of the odds board. I don't know if you have any sponsors right now, but like the betting odds board, those are spots where every single one of them, you're like, okay, Ohio State's the favorite. Why? They just lost more than a dozen players to the NFL. I don't know. They're Ohio State. They're still super talented. Now, Texas is up there. Why? We still haven't seen Arch Manning start 13, 14, 15 games. I mean, that's an unproven commodity and all the way down. And so for Notre Dame, you do have the quarterback questions, but consider me still very confident and bullish on what they can accomplish this season, just because I saw them lose so many players last year to season-ending injuries and still be able to remain in the hunt and make it all the way to the title game. So I think that even after losing some players to the NFL and just a couple to the portal, not a lot, but a couple, that they're still going to be just as formidable as they were a year ago.
You're listing some of those teams that, they're going to be in the 6-7. A&M's playing a lot of them. Notre Dame, Texas, LSU. They're teams that A&M has to play. And those games are all on the road, which makes, if they're going to win 9 or 10 games this year, the Auburn game, the South Carolina game, the Florida game, all so important. So just your thoughts on those 3 teams quickly before I let you go.
Okay. You said Auburn, Florida,
South Carolina,
and LSU. South Carolina. All right.
All home games for A&M, by the way.
Right. So South Carolina is rightfully getting discussed because Lenoris Sellers is super talented and fun to watch. That is something to sell to a college football audience. They lost a lot off last year's team. One thing that we talk about on the Cover 3 podcast is, your number of draft picks is always going to be something we look at for the talent that's gone. But how about also the number of players that get invited to the combine? The number of who might end up being undrafted free agents, but are really good college football players. And that's those kinds of players are what really help, build out the infrastructure of a strong competitive team. So I think Lenoris Sellers will be really, really fun, but consider me someone who's maybe not going to throw all of the stock behind South Carolina just based on the quarterback position alone. Florida clearly has to ride up and down with DJ Lagway's health. Billy Napier's future rides up and down with DJ Lagway's health. They do seem very good along both lines of scrimmage. That'll be something that's interesting to track moving forward. And while Hugh Freeze says that he's got one of the best wide receiver rooms he's ever had, and goodness gracious, he's had a lot of great wide receivers. I mean, how much do we trust Jackson Arnold? You know, you talked about the questions up and down the line in the Southeastern Conference at quarterback. Jackson Arnold's one of those where his ceiling, based on his projections coming out of high school, say one thing, but what we saw from that first year at Oklahoma said something else. Can he be able to take a step forward after a little bit of an up and down freshman season? So I think that those are all opponents where you have flaws and you've got a large gap between the ceiling and the floor. Large gap between the ceiling and the floor.
Chip, this was great. Let's do it again, all right?
All right, sounds good. Y'all be well.
Thank you so much. Chip Patterson here on TexAgs Live. We'll hit a break. We'll come back with Around the SEC. Then Dr. John Thornton will join us, talk about his honor entering the Southwest Conference Hall of Fame. That and more. Right now, a moment for Caldwell Country Chevrolet. You can find them on Highway 21 in Caldwell and online. CaldwellCountryChevrolet.com if you're a business owner and you want to take your business to the next level and you need a fleet of vehicles and you got to find a place to go do it, you go do it at Caldwell Country Chevrolet. They've expanded their selection of commercial vehicles to meet your everyday needs. And they are also a newly designated business elite dealer, which means they understand all the issues that you have to go to keep moving forward. And every commercial vehicle comes with that legendary free oil change for life because they believe in supporting local businesses. Remember, it's about a 15-minute drive. The edge of Bryant to the beginnings of Caldwell, a short conversation away, but you'll see the difference when you step on the lot and you do business with the great people at Caldwell Country Chevrolet. Highway 21 in Caldwell. Online, CaldwellCountryChevrolet.com. Hey everyone, David Nuño and Olin Buchanan and OB. Typically, we start off the show in this section, and we call it the Holistic Planning Cool
The cool zone, yeah. It's pretty cool.
What do we know about holistic planning?
Well, a lot of cool stuff. For instance, holistic planning can help you with your investments.
I love that.
They can help you with your taxes. So
I don't like paying taxes.
You can get that money from your investments and they keep it. They'll help you keep it away from the government.
Yep.
Not all of it, but more of it. And then they'll even help you with your estate planning. When you're old like me, you got to make sure some of that money you made is there for when you want to retire and just enjoy the rest of your life.
You want your estate to be planned. But they also do something else.
Yeah, well, if you are, like, say, a sports fan, and you've always wanted to...
Everybody watching us, right?
Yeah. And you want to always dream of being an owner, well, in a certain way you can, because they will broker the deal for you to invest in pro sports.
Yeah, what you need to do is check out investinprosports.com. That's where you can get all the information if you want to invest in a team. I don't know what team. He'd probably try to buy the Cowboys. I'd try to buy a lot of the Houston teams. Whatever it may be, investinprosports.com. It is holistic planning, and we love hanging out at the Holistic Planning Cool Zone. As a reminder, the final segment of the program is brought to you by Double Dave's. That's at 10:50. But right now, caller number 12, 979-693-1150. We're going to hook you up with your choice of a dozen pepperoni rolls or a large one-topping pizza from Double Dave's. They've been serving Aggieland since 1984 with your favorite pizza and, of course, those world-famous pepperoni rolls. Reliable in-house delivery, bringing piping hot goodness straight to your door. Just click on doubledaves.com and your favorites are on their way. All right, friends, let's go to the Angry Elephant News and Social Center. We got ourselves some breaking news.
I know. Breaking news on this Monday from TexAgs' very own Jason Howell. This morning, kicker from Shreveport, Asher Murray, announced his commitment to the Aggies. The junior last year was 44 of 47 on PATs and 12 of 14 on field goals with a long of 56 on his way to Max Prep's first-team junior All-American honors and first-team LSWA All-State honors. He also handled kickoff duties with 48 touchbacks on 57 kicks.
All right. Got himself somebody. I want you to read this text that came in from a 979 from Brian.
Steve and Brian said...
Oh, sorry. Steve and Brian.
Steve and Brian said, could you limit or at least minimize transfers if you add non-compete clauses to their contracts if we go as far as having athletes as employees?
Well, I think if you have athletes as employees, then they have contracts, and then you can limit their movement because they're under contract for 2 years, right? Or whatever it may be. But I do think it's interesting if you put these stipulations in people's contracts, they have to become employees first before any of it. And then if what you're saying is, can you put a cap on transfers? You look at what and Luke, you can pipe in on this if you want, but the MLS, the Major League Soccer, like they can only have X amount of designated or international players on their rosters. And I'm curious if you could put a number on how many transfer portal people a program can take in. I don't think you can do that without a governing entity. But like in the MLS, you have these designated players where you can add only somehow certain programs or franchises get allowed to put more. But if it's 3, I'm not saying that would be the number for college football, but I think it's something to consider. All right, you can have 7 transfers from your unlimited transfer portal. Like you can enter the transfer portal as much as you want, but this program only gets 7 per season. It'll never fly, ever. Thank you for agreeing with that. It'll never fly.
I don't think so.
But Luke, do you have a thought on this? Could you put here's the rule, just like they do in other sports. You can only bring X, Y, and Z. You can only bring in 7 transfer portal additions to your team. The rest has to be homegrown from your high school.
Well, then what happens if your coach leaves and your whole team leaves? Could you put a limit on it then?
Then I think you open it up. I think that's a good point, though. All right, so you get 7 if there's no coaching change, and then you can and then it's going to be a race, to who gets the top 7 guys. And then do you take people out of when somebody else becomes, somebody else goes in the portal? You're like, I don't know if we're going to honor this one because we want that guy.
Yeah, I mean, there's really you could always put a guideline on it, but then again, is every program going to follow that? Like, what if a team has a lot of areas of need on their entire defense and they got to go get 10 players in the portal, but then they can only get 7? Are you then just going to subject that team to being poor on the defensive end?
Well, I mean, in the NFL draft, right, you get X amount of drafts, right, picks.
That's fair, yeah.
Right? And you can't always remake your roster in an offseason. Sometimes it takes a couple of years. Look, I'm just spitballing ideas here, but could you not have a total? I'm sure in some legal court somewhere it'll be like, no, you can't do that. It's, anti-American. I don't know. But thinking about the good of the game and thinking about the college football that I loved watching growing up, that many of you, and I still love it. Like, there's nothing not to love about it. There is something intriguing about being able to add somebody at any point, right? When your program is winning, you love however your program got there, right? I'm just thinking for the good of the game, what could you do under the current constraints that we're in? And I don't think you could do it. I just like the idea behind it.
And that's fair. Hey, I have a completely unrelated note here. Asher Murray, the new kicker commit that y'all were discussing, guess who he went to high school with? I'll let you guess.
Luke Evangelist.
No, he went to high school with TexAgs fall intern Alex Schoonover. They're both from Shreveport and went to high school together. How cool is that?
All right. Congratulations. I don't know why I'm congratulating. Hey, congrats for going to the same school. Way to go, Schoonover.
I just thought that was a fun note.
Yeah, good note. Thank you, Luke. We're going to hit a break here. When we come back, Dr. John will be in studio, chit-chat about his career at A&M and all the good stuff that he's been a part of and going into the Southwest Conference Hall of Fame. We'll chit-chat with him about that and get some thoughts on Buckyball and the future of A&M basketball. Right now, the Daily Company, they're a family-owned business, and they offer HVAC, electrical, and plumbing generator services available 24/7. With their HVAC services, that includes thermostat repairs, refrigerant leaks, furnace failures, and seasonal tune-ups. You've got plumbing. They'll take care of those leaks. They'll take care of clogged drains, water heater installation, maintenance to keep those pipes in top shape. On the electrical side, you've got wiring, you've got outlet repairs, upgrades for safety and efficiency, and generator repair, maintenance, installation to ensure for preparedness for power outages. They'll take care of you in College Station. They'll take care of you in Houston and in Austin. They have upfront pricing with no surprises. Contact the Daily Company, 979-260-2020. That is 979-260-2020. Or visit them at godaily.com to experience the daily difference.
What's up, TexAgs? This commercial break is brought to you by my good friends over at Aggieland Chevrolet, the official automotive sponsor of TexAgs.com and me, Billy Liucci. Greg Gunn is the proud owner of Aggieland Chevrolet and invites you to visit the dealership to experience true Aggie hospitality. From their friendly staff to the experienced service team, Aggieland Chevrolet is TexAgs approved. Check out the dealership off of Highway 6 in Bryan or go to AggielandChevrolet.com and tell them Billy Liucci sent you by.
And we're back. TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers Rollo Insurance Studio. Got Dr. John Thornton in studio. 5-decade journey at Texas A&M. Just recently honored with Southwest Conference Hall of Fame Class 2025. Congratulations, Dr. John.
Hey, well, thank you. Thank you so much. It's really kind of cool to, obviously, to receive that kind of recognition, but it's really been neat to kind of reflect nostalgically and actually hear from a bunch of people. And yeah, it's a neat honor, great honor.
We were discussing, like, these kids don't really know about the Southwest Conference, right? But that was the show.
Yeah. You know, the SWC, you got to take it in context. And obviously, there's so much. You mentioned it, 5 decades, whatever. It's a lot of time, right?
Yeah.
And there's only a certain number or an age group that even understands what that acronym stands for. But if you think about the day, in the context, going down nostalgia lane, the conference was the only thing in town in this region or Texas, you know, as for obviously. But if you think about it, everything was local. There wasn't ESPN. There wasn't 24/7 sports. All you got was what your local stations did in your local newspaper. And to my knowledge, as growing up as a kid, the only thing you knew was the Southwest Conference, the Lone Star Conference, maybe the Big State Conference. That was it.
Right.
You know, you knew about the other schools all around the country, but there wasn't a steady dose of all that.
Sure.
You lived what you were living in at that time. So yeah, being associated with that part of history is a really cool deal. There's a lot of great teams, all sports, a lot of phenomenal players, athletes, coaches, programs were celebrated and did extremely well within the region, with also on the national level.
So in the grand scheme of college athletics, the Southwest Conference, where did you feel like, looking back, where did it sit with the other big conferences?
Well, I do think because of kind of the history, and I think it's warranted, obviously football was the big deal, the kind of the lead dog in that thing. And it was for a long time, not foreign to what it is today, right. Also, right? But when you had the powerhouse that TU had going, when Emory Bellard got it going here at A&M, what Broyles had at Arkansas, and then when SMU, the Pony Express. I mean, so you had, those were national elite teams that garnered a lot of prestige and represented this region and the SWC in fine fashion. And everybody had their moment. Baylor had their moment, you know, TCU had their moments. So it was a family brotherhood. There was so much familiarity. Everybody went to school with everybody that went to different, and there was history there. But the premier program was pretty football, but you know, you had baseball that was really good, and obviously basketball has come on.
Take us to 73, 74 when you get newcomer of the year. Some of the thoughts of not only receiving that award, but like what it felt like to be the newcomer, the new guy.
Yeah, well, it was interesting. Obviously, I was a junior college transfer and wasn't heavily recruited out of high school. Mid-major was a bit kind of for me, and went to junior college because I wanted to play at a highest level that I possibly could, and then to go get better, and then have the opportunity to come to Texas A&M and actually be at a place that I was familiar with. My dad was a yell leader here. I was born in Bryan, you know, grew up in San Antonio, so I knew a lot of obviously the history, and to be able to come in here and kind of work my way into the starting lineup as the season progressed. We had a talented team. We had a bunch of guys that had been there before me, and then mixed with junior college guys, but then be able to work my way into the starting lineup and then perform to a level that kind of got some attention, and the award was just really, you know, something that I don't know if I anticipated anything like that, but it was quite an accomplishment, I think.
And then 75, the Southwest Conference championship year.
Yeah, so obviously it takes a team to do things like that, and some more junior college guys came in, a guy named Sonny Parker and a guy named Barry Davis, mixed with the guys that were already here, Jerry Mercer, Mike Floyd, Webb Williams, Ray Roberts, a very good core, Chuck Tone, I'm going to leave somebody out, but it was a great core group, really meshed together when a mix of junior college and a mix of guys that knew the ropes, and it was a team that had depth. And in a tough league, you had Eddie Sutton at Arkansas, you had Texas Tech, Gerald Myers, so it was a real battle. And ended up had an opportunity to play Texas, the final game of the season on Southwest Conference television at the time, to win the championship outright. in the middle of the day game, which was kind of one of those deals you'll always be a great memory.
So I'm looking through this: player, a graduate, assistant, high school coach, an athletic director. You've done it all.
Yeah, it's interesting. I never would have guessed that would have happened when I transferred from a junior college at Texas A&M, but eventually, earning 3 degrees from here, having many opportunities to be around. You just mentioned teammates that helped, be able to achieve something special. But from the different athletic directors that I had the ability to come back and work for. First of all, you got to mention the guy that got me here in the first place, Shelby Metcalf.
Yeah.
For be able to be here. If it wasn't for him, obviously, I wouldn't have been here. Every job that I ever got, whether it was at high school or when I was a head coach at Hill Junior College or University of Texas San Antonio, he was very instrumental in first developing me, but also helping me have these kind of opportunities. And then a great mentor of mine, but then to get here and get out of the coaching side into the athletic administrative side and have John David work for John David Crow, Heisman Trophy winner, been around the block, learned a lot from him, Wally Groff, then obviously with Bill Byrne came. So I don't know if people have the longevity or have the ability or opportunity to have the longevity I've had at one institution. And for an institution that has given me so much and to be able to pour back into it in ways that I've been able to do has just been very fulfilling. And obviously it's something that I take great pride in. And then there's just so many people that factored into that. And
then you were with the athletic program when the transition from the Big 12 to the SEC, you had a front row view of it all.
Yeah, so, I was interim head coach when Shelby was let go for 12 games, which was, a challenging time period for me at 40 years old and figuring out what's next. But then to be in the athletic department and the different roles that I was in and then have the opportunity to be the interim athletic director as we segued into the SEC. And that was an experience, obviously, in itself, going to Destin and participating with the president and all the head coaches and trying to sort through all the dynamics of the conference shuffle there. It was really eye-opening, and I felt like we did a great job of making that as smooth as possible.
How about this team that Bucky's putting together, and considering when he got hired and how late in the portal window it was, and all? I mean, he's put together some talent.
We talked about it just briefly here before we went on air, but it's been remarkable. Yeah. And, it's a new day. And I don't know why it's shocking that there's people always willing to look at opportunities and take advantage of them, but you got to be geared up. They're not just coming here unless there's something that they believe in, or they're going to believe in, or they have hope that it's a great fit for them. So for them to get here, Bucky and his staff to get here and put this together in such a short period of time in this kind of dynamic stage that athletics has found itself in, it's extremely impressive. And it's one thing that we both talked about, it's one thing to go get people, but it looks like to go get people that identify on what you're trying to get done and fit into types of play defensively and offensively that you're going to be noted for. And so it looks like they've done a really good job of piecing that part together. And I think with the main thing is having a little bit of ability to score, to have the ability to shoot the three and maybe like getting up and down the floor. So, yeah, it's exciting. It's like almost every day we see something else that adds on to it that is going to absolutely piques your interest.
I think it's impossible and unfair to predict how good they're going to be next year because there's just too many variables. But what I'll say about it is they're making it super intriguing to wonder, like, they might be pretty good.
Yeah, and I go along with that big time in the fact that you go to his press conference and just his confidence that he brings. And it's a welcoming, we're going to get it done. There's a time frame we're going to get it done in, but we're not going to say it's going to be years down the road. Right. We're getting after it now. I think, so you see what the fruits are of this recruiting process, but you also see who he's brought in to help him get this done. You got Kyle, you got Mitch, and you got Frank Haith coming. All these guys have a familiarity with Texas A&M. They're coming back to a place that they know, and they've also bring an experience level that's going to be really, really good. They're all different, but they're all good people, and they're all workers, and they've all had different paths, but they're going to come into the confluence and that staff together with what Bucky's got going. I think that's pretty formidable.
If you think about the last 20 years of Aggie basketball, 26 years, we've had a really nice run.
It is. And one of the things I think that what has been accomplished, I mean, everybody at the end of the year, how far did you go to the NCAA tournament? That's the deal. I mean, that's just the way it is anymore. I mean, so, you look at back the composite of the people that have been at Texas A&M. How many coaches do you go back and say, wow, there was accomplishments in everybody's tenure? Now, something's changed and people leave and all that kind of thing, but there has been no void.
Right.
Now, have you won extremely well every year? Nah, but you think about even like we'll go back to last year. What was done? The first time a #1 team in the nation we've ever played and beat.
Right.
To win as many games as they put together, as Buzz put together over the course of the year. Getting that team to stay together and perform at the level they did, to play at the high level, to never leave the top 20 ranking through the course, maybe top 25 ranking over the course of the year. Those are remarkable, right?
Right.
But like I said, we're kind of getting used to that. That's kind of
so what's the next step,
That's right. That's exactly right. And that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
But also, we don't want to discount what's happened to get to where we are right now either.
Dr. John, thank you so much for coming in.
Hey, thank you for having me.
And congratulations.
Thank you so much.
All right, we'll hit a break. We'll come back with Around Aggieland. Right now, if your organization or business is looking for an opportunity to engage with Aggies, you need to check out the Association of Former Students. They bring Aggies of all ages together during marquee events held throughout the year. We're talking about Aggie Rain Day, All Aggie Hullabaloo, the gathering. They all welcome tens of thousands of guests, and there are many sponsorship and vendor opportunities to get your brand in front of those attendees. These events offer a wide variety of both digital and in-person options to promote your brand. This includes title sponsorship naming, on-site presence, recognition in social media posts, and much, much more. There's also advertising opportunities in both the Texas Aggie Magazine and the Aggie News newsletter, which are seen by over 230,000 people. So if your business is ready to engage with Aggies, choose a partner with the organization that's been supporting the Aggie Network for over 140 years. For more information on options available through the association, please email sponsorships@aggienetwork.com. It is the Association of Former Students. And we're back. TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. Around Aggieland, presented by Norman G. State Bank. Kaylee Dryer's in the house. Hello, Kaylee.
Hey, it's
Why
been
did
a
I yell
while.
at you? I was yelling.
It's been a while.
How are you?
I'm good.
What's going on in around Aggieland?
So first of all, we're going to talk about a few recent transfers that we had. So Texas A&M baseball added 2 transfers from Florida Atlantic University. Pitcher MJ Brauninger, who ended his 2025 campaign with a 2.01 ERA and a 1.13 WHIP, pitching 44 2/3 innings in 28 appearances. The second transfer is outfielder Jake Dewar, also from Florida Atlantic, who had 11 doubles, 27 RBIs, and 21 walks in 34 games. And then also Coach McMillan added a transfer as well. Ruben Dominguez from Spain to the Aggie men's basketball roster. The guard was named the 2019 FIBA U16 European Championship Tournament MVP and is known to be an elite three-point shooter. So we're excited about him. And then on Friday, I'll have a lot of news for track and field. But this past weekend, they traveled to Oregon for the NCAA championships. They begin running on Wednesday. The men will have 11 individuals competing, along with the 4x100 relay and the 4x400 meter relay. And the women will have 12 entries for the final meet of the season. So we're excited for that. And last thing is on Friday, Texas A&M soccer announced their 2025 SEC schedule, which includes 5 matches at Ellis Field versus Texas, Arkansas, Missouri, and Kentucky, as well as opening SEC play against Georgia on September 12th. The Aggies begin their 2025 season hosting the Baylor Bears on August 14th.
Awesome stuff, Kaylee. Appreciate you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Hey, when Billy comes on the program here in the next hour, look, we got to talk about the big weekend recruiting-wise because Aaron Gregory shutting it down and some of the others that came and visited. We'll break that down and also talk a little bit about the baseball transfer portal window because obviously they're adding some really nice players, but long-term, who else could we maybe expect in that? So we'll talk to him about that. But obviously, I think the first part of our chit-chat will be on the house settlement. And I guess my main question for Billy is how set up is Texas A&M for this new future? He's been talking about like they've had all these pieces, to their disposal. They've been setting things up with the future in mind. So how is it? Like right now, one of the big things that he alluded to months ago was that we're going to give, all of our sports going to be fully scholarshiped, right? So all those guys and females, I should say, will all have their opportunity to get full scholarships. How does that, in this first year, compete with some of the others? Because Texas is not going to be doing that for baseball. Baseball is doing that. So those are a couple of the storylines I want to ask Billy. And then also, SEC Mike had his Heisman Trophy sleepers from the SEC non-quarterbacks. There is an Aggie on that list. We'll talk about that with Billy, somebody that the A&M offense certainly needed quite a bit last year and will need him this year, along with his friends in that position group room. I won't tell you who it is, but you should be able to figure it out. All right, we'll get into that and much, much more. You're listening to TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers.
All right, guys, let's talk about some new partners. Aggieland Hydration and Injectables. They're Aggie owned and operated. They are an mobile IV hydration company that was founded back in 2024. I met with Sheldon and Danny over the last week, and they're awesome people. They really know what they're doing. They're proud to serve Bryan College Station with awesome services like IV hydration, Botox, and even some weight loss options. Whether you're looking for a quick boost of hydration or dehydration preventative, they can tailor an IV cocktail specific to your needs. And on a busy weekend, I know some of you guys might be partying a little bit too much. If that's the case, an IV can be one of the easiest ways to ensure you're receiving all those necessary vitamins and minerals that make you feel better. Their overall mission is to bring a more personalized and accessible wellness option to the broader range of clientele here in the Bryan College Station and Brazos Valley area. To book an appointment or inquire about it, just call them up or text them. 979-217-1561. Again, it's Aggieland Hydration and Injectables. Check them out. It's our friends at Aggieland Hydration and Injectables.
And we're back. TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers Rollo Insurance Studio. Hope to have Billy here in studio in a little bit. We're going to do Around the SEC, and that's presented by the Jaxer Group. Behind the glass is Luke Evangelist. Luke, tell me something that you have for Around the SEC.
Well, David, how about let's take a look at something that our great team back here put together.
In the last 5 seconds?
No. It's been in the works over the weekend. Just our great team back here. Right? Too many people to name. A graphic that you might have seen if you follow at TexAgs Live on social media. And it is, per ESPN FPI, the chances to win a national championship with just SEC teams listed. So they've got Texas, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, and then Texas A&M coming in 5th with a 2.1% chance to win the national championship. And so we could get Matthew Dawson on what odds those would be, but just want to get your thoughts on, one, that beautiful social media graphic our team put out, and then two, the information in that graphic of, is a 2.1% chance justified? Is it right? Is it wrong? Is it too early to even put a number on it? Your thoughts?
Well, first off, you got to put up the graphic. I haven't seen it.
Okay, so give me a second.
I mean, you're talking about this beautiful graphic, which, by the way, Nick did show me during the break, so I was able to see that. But not this break, an earlier break. But I think our audience is like captivated by the what do you call it? The production value that TexAgs has brought.
Hey, so I've just been notified. Nick Savage told me to say this. If you want to see the graphic, you should go look at it on the Twitter. That's why you should follow the Twitter, just because it's on there and it looks good. Thank you, Nick, for that note.
Look, when it comes to this football power index, it's I guess it's a cool conversation. I'm looking at last year's FPI. Last year. So do we have we don't have this year's, right? Laffy Taffy?
Yes, hello?
Yeah. We don't have this year's in graphic form, right?
I can go find it.
No, it's fine. So last year, Georgia, who I think had a down year, was number 1 in the FBI. Okay. Number 2 was the Oregon Ducks, who they had a nice season, but they were eliminated a little bit early. Number 3 was Texas. Okay. So these are all teams that made the playoffs so far, right? As my computer freezes, I want to continue giving you the FPI list because I want to see how it compares to this year's, right? Because when you consider, what was A&M on the list? You said 5th?
5th overall in the SEC, 11th overall.
11th overall. Okay. Well, for some reason, my computer's frozen. But if the first 3 are all playoff teams and they actually turned out to be real playoff teams, can A&M, and I think this is, to be honest with you, Ohio State was the next one and they ended up winning it. Then you had Penn State. These are all last year's top 10 FBI teams. Notre Dame, they were 7th. You have Oklahoma, not good. They were 8th. You have Tennessee, 9th. They did make the playoffs. You have Missouri, did not make the playoffs, had a very nice year at 10. And then 11, they were way off. And I hope this, you said 11th, right, Luke, just to make sure.
A&M is 11th.
Yeah, I'm not listening to you. 11th, Florida State. What kind of year did they have last year?
Not a good one.
So the reason I bring all those up is the FPI, look, as cool as it is as a talking point during the offseason, it doesn't know jack. It doesn't know the X's and O's, right? Florida State, who was the exact same position that A&M is in this year's at 11th, they had one of the most historic bad seasons that their program's ever seen. Good morning, Billy Liucci.
Hi, David.
I like that. I don't know if jacket's the right way to phrase it. Is that jacket?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what it is, but I like it.
Kind of like a South Central shirt.
South Central, like Los Angeles?
Yeah.
Why
would you? Let's not bring in Los Angeles into the conversation.
And why would it be South Central anyway? Even on a good day.
Luke was talking about the FPI rankings that we tweeted about. A&M came in at 11th, 5th in the SEC.
I almost accidentally spilled hot coffee on Luke walking in.
That would have been fantastic.
While he was on air, it would have been epic, but I recovered in time to not do it.
My point about it was that it's a nice talking point during the offseason, but it doesn't tell you anything about what happens on Saturdays.
I don't care if some ranking gives A&M a 2% chance to win a national title. It's too that ranking is too numerical for me. You know, like I prefer like the rankings that mix the numbers, the returning starters, the statistics with the common sense, where you can sift through that and kind of let your number. I mean, I'm oversimplifying it here, obviously, but let your numbers spit whatever out, and then start to apply common sense in there. Well, and to me, first of all, I think Texas at 22% is entirely too high.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's got to be at the top. I think if I'm ranking my top 3 teams in the SEC this year, I probably would actually have Texas 1, Georgia 2, Bama 3. And I think that's what they have, or maybe they flip Georgia and Bama. But
Georgia's 2, Alabama's 3.
Okay, that's probably what I would do as well. But I think the gap between 1 and 4, 5, 6, 7, 3 and 6, 7, 8, 9, like is smaller than it's ever been this year. And so much of that to me has to do with the fact that teams at the top, namely Texas, Georgia, have lost a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Along with, and this is college football this year as well, along with teams like Notre Dame, Ohio State, and those 2 really stand out. Oregon. Those are teams like that were national title contenders last year that lost a ton, along with Texas and Georgia. Penn State lost some key players. They also bring back quite a bit. So, but you combine that with these teams at the top lost a lot. You combine that with quarterbacks, and you look around not only the country, but in particular in the league, but like the country. Oh, well, it's one of the biggest games of the year in college football. It's going to early on. It's going to be Ohio State v. Texas in Columbus. 2 new starters at quarterback. I don't care how many stars are by their name. It's 2 new starters. I tend to trust Arch Manning from seeing him a little bit more than Julian Sayin if he ends up being that guy. But one's on the road, the other one's at home. And it's early in the season. You look at A&M Notre Dame. Marcel Reed is a returning starter to a degree, going on the road, and you got a new quarterback for the Fighting Irish. LSU and Clemson is going to be one of those rare matchups where you see 2
veteran QBs,
like seasoned veteran NFL-bound quarterbacks going at it. You're not going to see a lot of that in not only the early season matchups, but also in season in the conference. So when I look at Texas transitioning to Manning from Ewers, who'd been their starter for essentially 3 years, going, you see Georgia going with Gunnar Stockton, who in limited action, got trounced by Notre Dame, should have thrown a game-losing pick 6 against Texas, which I get. He was thrust into the SEC title game midway, but I mean, to put too much stock into him. And then you look at 3, and it's Ty Simpson at Bama. If he holds off some of the other quarterbacks, including a true freshman from Dallas.
And Tennessee with Joey Aguilar, the top 4, all new quarterbacks.
Is Tennessee 4th on there?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And Tennessee dumping Nico the way they did. So now it is. It's like OU is supposed to be a team that maybe rises. They've got a new one in John Mateer. Who else? Auburn. People are saying they might make a big jump because of all their skill talent. Jackson Arnold is a transfer that's looking to reinvent himself. So you go through, when you start talking about stuff like that, and then you go factor in the potential of some of these guys we talked about, plus the quote, the returnees or semi-returnees like Marcel Reed, Derek Lagway, and Sellers is a true returning. Nuss is a true returning. The talent level that you're talking about, juxtaposed to the inexperience at the position, I don't think there's going to be a dominant team in the conference, and I think it's going to be chaos weekly in the league. I think it's going to be kind of carnage where they eat each other up, and it's a good thing it's a 12-team playoff.
Which is why I think the schedule, and it always plays a big part. But in a year where you have so many questions about each team, quarterback and roster retention and whatnot, those with the more manageable SEC schedules going to have a much more simple path to the playoffs.
Yeah.
And I know that's always the case, but I'm just looking at this year in general, where you talk about 2 to 9 potentially.
Last year that was Texas. Last year that was to a degree A&M as well. But I think this year both those teams will have it a little tougher. I don't think A&M's is brutal. Obviously, it's always tough when maybe the 3 toughest teams on your schedule are on the road.
Yep.
You go Notre Dame, LSU, and Texas. There's a pretty decent chance that those are your 3 best. Florida, South Carolina might have something to say about that, maybe that 3rd spot with LSU. But the fact that you get Florida, South Carolina, and Auburn at home, but it's a tough road schedule for the Aggies when you go Notre Dame, Texas, LSU, and even Arkansas. Like that's a rough road away from home schedule for the Aggies. So their schedule, I think, has gotten a lot tougher than it was last season. And then as far as Texas goes, I think they got dealt a tremendous hand. And my biggest thing I've always said is the team with the biggest gripe out of this should be Oklahoma. And their athletic department and Brent Venables. It might ultimately cost Brent Venables his job. That difference in schedule is insane. But for Texas, now you have to go to Florida in a year where the Gators, assuming Lagway can stay healthy, should be a lot better. Yep. They've got to go up to Columbus, which I know they're rebuilding, reloading, but that national title, that national champ that they're playing the year after, looks completely different on paper today than what Michigan did. Going into last year, you knew Michigan was not going to be very good. They had to flip, they were changing coaches more than anything else, much less losing he was a first rounder, right? Mm-hmm. Quarterback, McCarthy. So they lost so much. You knew Michigan was not going to be that good. Ohio State might be preseason number 1, maybe number 2. It might be 1v2 when the Longhorns and Buckeyes collide. Their schedule got a lot tougher as well. When you throw in Ohio State in place of Michigan, and then you've got to go to Athens, Georgia, and you've got to go to Florida. You'd like to think A&M is going to be a better football team than they were last year. I know that's a big debate. I had a discussion last night with a friend of mine, and he was just so negative towards the losses. But then if you brought up anything in the positive, it was met with just negativity and just kind of dismissal. And I'm like, you can't.
Which positive?
Well, like Missouri and LSU, and the whole thing was, well, neither of those teams knew which quarterback they were to face. I'm like, you can't. Then when you talk about South Carolina, you have to talk about losing the SEC's leading rusher in Le'Veon Moss, and a guy that they leaned on so much. And what did that have? What effect did that have? When you talk about, you have to use these things when you're talking. To me, the only one, and then you don't want to hear about Elko's record in year 1 in the SEC versus every other coach active in this league. I mean, that's a reality. I'm not making that up. His first year record was 8-4, 8-4 in the regular season versus. Go look up the other 15.
Sark was 5-7, right?
Yeah, I mean it's.
Kirby's one of the few that had a really.
No,
good year.
He did not.
He did not.
No, he did not. He was probably 7-5, might have been 8-4, but I believe if you can look that up, Kirby Smart's first season. And I'm not saying like give an award for this.
No. I know.
Well, that's what people like can't have a rational discussion without going, oh, this is. No, I'm giving you facts. Like, so I'm not of the opinion that you can just go, oh, this will be a better team, but they might have a worse record because of the schedule. That's not an acceptable excuse. I think Mike Elko would be the first one to say, yeah, we got to improve in year 2 because he's fighting an ongoing optics battle on the recruiting battlefield, which they're doing really well. And these prospects are, not only are they doing a good job of recruiting, it tells you they're excited about the messaging from the head coach and the A&M staff about the future.
Right.
But, Yeah, when you look at last year, for year one against I think they got a nice schedule. The only game that I sit back and go, the Aggies got to be kicking themselves over is Auburn.
Auburn, yeah.
And you got to be going. There were plenty of injuries, but I don't think it was that uncommon compared to other teams at all. The one injury you go, damn, was of all the guys to lose, Le'Veon there was tough. Outside of losing that Auburn game, I think it was a hell of a first year. I mean, that one, it changed kind of the look of it, and you and I have talked about it. If you win that game and you went to 4 overtimes, if you win that game, and I said all along I thought that was going to be a tough game because too much talent. A&M wasn't overwhelming them with talent. And I had my buddy who was saying, well, they were favored in every game last year. I said, okay, well, Vegas knows more than we do. Do they? Does Vegas know more about like where Marcel was at week to week in his development than someone, and I'm not saying me, it could be me or anyone connected to the program to the point where you kind of know exactly where he's at in terms of his progress. Did they predict the Le'Veon Moss injury at South Carolina? Should A&M have been favored going up there? On the road at night against a team that really outplayed LSU pretty thoroughly and lost. Came within a play of beating Alabama on the road. I'm not saying you should go up there and lose. I'm saying that should have been a toss-up game to me. On the road at night in that environment against a quarterback that was playing like Sellers. And the other aspect of that was, again, like, should fans be going, it was expected for a first-year coach to go up there and win against a year 5 coach in that situation with South Carolina with a first and second round pick and 14 NFL Combine invites versus A&M's 3? Well, now Texas A&M, you've heard Elko talk about it. They've got a veteran football team. He's played a ton of football. They're bringing back a quarterback in Marcel Reed that started most of the SEC season, played in all but 2 games in the SEC, started all but 3, and even in that one, was kind of the catalyst of why they beat LSU. So you return that quarterback, you return a lot of experience, a lot of NFL talent, as Elko has said. You expect the team, it's a fair expectation for them to make a jump. And so then when you go, okay, damn, South Carolina's coming into Kyle Field, they're good. Florida's coming into Kyle Field with Lagway. That's going to be really tough. And some people are picking them as a sleeper team in the SEC. Auburn beat you last year. They're coming in with all those receivers. They look to make a jump. Well, all the things we said last year, on the road, at night, tough environment, not as much NFL top-end talent in the upper classes. All those things are not going to be the case in at least in those particular matchups. And I don't think against anyone save, even including Notre Dame, I don't think against anyone save Texas. And I'm not even sure in terms of who's on the field, how much that talent. Like if I'm rating players today, A&M doesn't have a Colin Simmons. They don't have an Anthony Hill, unfortunately. And then there's the whole Arch Manning thing. That's a pretty tough one to, because you have to look at him and see the talent, and you have to see like one way that thing could go, but you also have to look at it realistically and not get, like bullied into having to buy the hype and say, man, he hasn't played that much, and they weren't putting him out there. I've said it a million times in key situations in games when your starter was struggling inside the red zone in like must-win games and situations. So, do I think he's going to be really good? Yeah. But talent-wise, Texas is going to have some of those guys at the very, very top of that. But out of all the guys on the field, I think that gap is much, much more slim than it was a year ago when these two teams played with Texas with all that talent.
All right, we'll continue with this on the other side. Right now, Brazos Valley Wheel Repair. If your wheels have been damaged by the potholes in town or the curbs or the mediums, go see the experts at Brazos Valley Wheel Repair. Don't replace those damaged rims. Get them repaired. because they have over 2 decades of experience, and they're going to make sure that your wheel is returned to perfectly working, safe conditions. They road force balance all their wheels to make sure you get the smoothest, most safest possible ride there. And they also have experience in repairing everything from your minor curb rash to polishing to the more complex jobs. And if your wheels are in good shapes and you just need a fresh look, shapes. Yeah, curb rash. Yeah, yeah. You want to?
Is that similar to
minor
radar
curb
rash?
Yeah. Anything else? If you need tires to match your custom rims, Brazos Valley Wheel Repair can help you with that as well. It is the Brazos Valley Wheel Repair. They offer interest-free financing and even offers for first responders, active military, veterans with a 10% discount with ID. You can go to bvwheelrepair.com or in person at 508 Burnett Street in Bryan. It is the Brazos Valley Wheel Repair. And we're back. TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner, Schuler's Rollo Insurance Studio. We're going to go to the Angry Elephant News and Social Center because I thought this text from Eddie in Austin would catch your attention.
Eduardo.
Eddie in Austin said that Sark is 0-5 versus Kirby, Day, and DeBoer. Sips should be no higher than 4 on any preseason poll.
It's funny you say that because, so first, two things. Remind me to talk in a minute about future stuff that we're going to be doing. But I was going to put out a few little thoughts on all these lists coming out today. And one of them would be, what does my top 5, top 10 look like? And spoiler alert, I do not have A&M in my preseason top 10. I don't think coming off a 8-5 season, you push them all the way up into the top 10. That's putting too much. There's a certain amount of stock I put in returning starters and returning production, and then there is the reality. I think they should be, I will say, in that 12 to 18 range, 12 to 19. Like, there's going to be so many teams bunched up in there. I wouldn't fight or argue with any of it. I think Marcel Reed's jump. I saw Mike Craven from Dave Campbell's Texas Football Road. I haven't read it yet, so I don't know if I agree, disagree, love it, hate it. But the concept is there's an article that the Aggies are going to go as far as Marcel Reed could take them, for lack of a better. And I don't entirely disagree. I don't think it's too much of that on him, but I think you could say the same about Texas A&M. You could say the same about Texas. You could say the same. I mean, these are all to varying degrees. You could say the same about Florida. You could say the same about Nussmeier. You could say the same about Ty Simpson in Tuscaloosa, Gunnar Stockton. Simmons at Ole Miss.
Yep.
How does he replace Jackson Dart? It is going to be one of those seasons in the SEC, even with the returning guys, even with a returning starter like Nuss or Sellers. South Carolina is only going as far as Sellers can take them, especially with what they lost on defense.
Yeah.
LSU, if Nussmeier has these Saturdays where he is really bad or really pedestrian, like he was against Ole Miss for 58 minutes of that game, like he was in the second half of A&M, like he was for 60 minutes of the Alabama game, like he was when he threw should have been a game-losing pick 6 at South Carolina. That's a third of their games, and I'm not even studying the other ones. Everyone's talking up John Mateer. If I'm doing quarterback rankings right now, no one's got Marcel Reed ahead of John Mateer. I'm sitting there looking at my rankings going, if I put Reed up there, I'm going to catch all kinds of hell.
Yep.
And it's not in the top 4, but if I put him up there, you catch all kinds of hell. And I'm sitting there looking at Mateer versus Reed versus even like a guy like Pavia, who I think people have just kind of cast aside. When that dude, I know it doesn't look as pretty, and he just kind of grits it and gets it done. But damn, man. Same thing with Simmons. I see so many people putting Simmons ahead of Marcel. I'm like, why?
Right.
Because Lane Kiffin, and they're telling you he throws this beautiful ball. I mean, nothing against like some of the guys that have come through here, but Jamil Showers was like that. Nick Starkel was like that. Calzada was like that. He's still in the league. So if we're talking about who throws a beautiful pass, let's move him up. So my thing with it, that is a tough argument to have. My thing with Mateer is if you go look at how he played against some of the better teams on Washington State's schedule, those numbers don't look nearly as good. You have to factor that in when you're trying to rank instead of just anointing these players. So in the case of Marcel, his jump is going to be really, really important. And so I was going to rank that today.
Okay.
And I was looking at, when you're looking at Texas, they are, and last week I got into it with everybody by just quote tweeting this guy who's saying, hey, why are we not taking a harder look at them? And there were some good points back. And it's what I say about A&M all the time. Are we holding A&M to a different standard when we're trying to break down their weaknesses than we are other teams on the schedule just because we know more about A&M?
It's the defense
we know what
mechanism,
those we know what those deficiencies look like. Well, because we're more familiar with teams like Texas or LSU that are right here, and you know their personnel better because A&M recruited so many of them. Are we ignoring what Ohio State's losing? Are we ignoring what Georgia's losing?
Let me ask you a question. Any of the teams on A&M's schedule, if they played 50% of their season with their backup quarterback for whatever reason, because when we're talking about how far A&M can take, he's going to be dependent on Marcel Reed. Had we said the exact same thing, and people would have said it about Connor last year,
yeah,
A&M actually had a pretty successful season if you consider it through that lens. That I don't know how many teams win as many games as A&M did with their top running back going down at the meat of the season. And also, by the way, their projected quarterback who could have been the top is he a first-round pick? Is he the best of this group? If that's the case, how well they would do if they go to Arch's backup, or if Ty Simpson's not the guy at Alabama. A&M played half the season with their backup quarterback for results reasons, not necessarily injury reasons.
Well, and injury reasons. Because Connor did get hurt in that Notre Dame game. And, that's a good question, David. And I think as you're sitting here, you just go back to last year. Say LSU without Nuss. South Carolina without Sellers, Texas without Quinn, and they had that for a few weeks, and Arch did a good job, good enough, but that was against a light portion of the schedule.
Mississippi State?
A very light. I think it was Louisiana Monroe, Mississippi State, and that might have been the two. But, man, you look at – you saw Georgia with Gunnar Stockton and not Carson Beck, okay? That would have been Ty Simpson last year.
Yeah.
If Milroe had gone down. That would have been Tennessee if Nico had gone down. So, yeah, you can do that, and then people go, well, no, because Marcel – no, because just because you saw Marcel look good in some games doesn't change the fact that he was probably rushed into action. No, not probably. Marcel Reed was not ready to start in the SEC last season, and he had to. And then he got himself ready. And what he did against Florida is that much more impressive. And going up to Dallas the week after, and both quarterbacks were having a hard time attacking those secondaries and dealing with pass rush. And Marcel did a better job of it than a veteran in Taylor Green, and was very poised down the stretch and in the fourth quarter. I think that might have been, again, I go back and I'm like, I know that I'm not going to sell Marcel as a Heisman contender, an all-SEC contender, because I don't think, like a lot of these quarterbacks, most of them in the league, I don't think he has gone out and proven it as much yet. But I think there are things you see in him, and when you're trying to decide, all of these quarterbacks are trying to make this year one to year two jump, whether it's true freshman to first-year starter, whether it's guys like, don't forget, I'm hard on Nussmeier. Last year was his first year to start. He was replacing a Heisman winner. He could make a massive jump this year. Sellers was a guy that when South Carolina named him the starting quarterback, if you're an Aggie, raise your hand if you got scared of that game. But as the season went on, you watched him play, you're going, damn. If he didn't get hurt against LSU, he would have just humiliated that defense. And so you're like watching him almost beat Bama, and you're going, oh, it changes. That guy's going to make a year one to year two jump, which is scary. Lagway's another one. But Marcel, I just think, and I'm talking to Aggies here, really, and I'm saying, like, there were a lot of things he showed, and I know there are, like, okay, he's got to continue to improve as a consistent passer. I want to see him be more decisive as a runner. All these things, and you're doing this point, but I'm going to
I just want to make a point about your point.
I thought you were doing a break.
Oh, we do. We're 5 minutes late, but I wanted to make a point about your point.
Point about a point. Let's hear it.
Two critical moments in last season that could have looked completely different if he doesn't step up to the occasion. Mm-hmm. He stepped up at Florida.
Yeah.
When I don't know if many people could have done that, okay? He stepped up against LSU with all odds against him. Mm-hmm. How different we look at the season if Marcel Reed does not step up to those moments.
Well, and look, Marcel against Florida didn't know he would start until that morning, essentially. First career start, or second, I guess it was McNeese the week before. Didn't know he was starting until that. Or no, Connor started against me.
Yeah, it was.
Didn't
Marcel.
know he was starting until that morning. Went into the swamp and looked incredibly poised and won a game. The next week, I mentioned that Arkansas game. Here's a situation: you're down 20-17 or 21-17. I forget the score. 17-13, whatever it was. Arkansas punts it in the fourth quarter in Jerry World, Cowboy Stadium, and this second game starter, maybe I guess it was third because it's Bowling Green in between, gets the ball on the 1 yard line on your own one, and has to come out of there. Now Le'Veon Moss led the way with some incredible running. That was kind of his breakout performance, but Marcel dropped back. They called a pass in his own end zone, dropped back, fired a strike. The dude can throw, and he can throw well, and he can make all the throws. My thing is just going to be continued improvement on accuracy and just quickly making the right decision and getting rid of the football. And that comes with experience and practice and working the system. But that play from the 1, and then a couple scrambles on the next 2 drives, we're just calm, picking up first downs, not making mistakes. Then you mentioned LSU, down 17-0 at South Carolina, led them back on the road in that environment to take the lead. And then Auburn, down 21-0, brought them back, took the lead, had a really good statistical game, throws the perfect pass that should have extended it to a 5th overtime. And then USC had a nice statistical game, had 2 interceptions, 1 touchdown, should have had 2 touchdowns, 1 pick, bounced off Noah's helmet in the end zone, perfect strike, and then he scored from 20-something yards out to what should have been win the game. There are a lot of intangibles there that you saw, more so than what we know about some of these other quarterbacks 100%. That are making all these lists. That's all I'm saying. I don't think there's anything wild about that commentary, because I think everything I said just now about Marcel Reed is kind of inarguable. He's got to just improve in terms of, consistently using his skills to hurt defenses and then consistently get that ball spread around, because I do think he's going to have a nice running game to lean on, a really good O-line to protect him, and better pass receiving targets than he had last year.
Yeah. All right, we'll hit a break. Right now, when insurance matters most, who's going to answer your call? That's the Rollo Insurance Group. You need to reach out to them when you are thinking about your insurance for next year. If you got a changing situation, you're getting a new vehicle, you've got kids about to start driving, whatever it may be, they are the official insurance provider of TexAgs Live, and they are the ones that take care of me and many people who work here at TexAgs. They got over 60 offices in Texas, whether it's auto, business, it's ranch insurance. Start a relationship with experts who put you first. Your agent becomes familiar with your situation. When you need advice or have a claim, reach out directly to them, because they will take care of you. The difference is real. The website is rolloinsurance.com/TexAgs. rolloinsurance.com/TexAgs. Or call them up, 888-44-ROLLO. That's 888-44-ROLLO. Try to time it. TexAgs Live. We're presented by David Gardner's Jewelers Rollo Insurance Studio. Billy in studio. So I wanted to do a little house settlement talk with you and just ask how well A&M is positioned in this new climate of college athletics, considering we've kind of got some guardrails. We're kind of taking the way, I think, was it Chip Patterson who said it? We're taking a side step, not necessarily a step forward, but a step in the process.
Yeah, I think I'm glad they're bringing that in. And like Chip said, I was listening to that earlier. It's a start. There had to be something. There had to be some uniformity to it all. And that provides, I think, some uniformity. Guardrails is overused. I don't think that provides any guardrails because everybody's going to be off the guardrails. There's still going to be, and you can get Trev Alberts in here, and maybe at some point we get Trev to sit down. It'd be really interesting to hear his take on it because he's on a committee, that's heavily involved in this stuff. There's going to be collectives. There's going to be teams that are going to continue to, how does this Deloitte thing factor in?
Mm-hmm.
How many lawsuits are going to come out of that when people say, hey, you want to pay this athlete this much to represent your restaurant? And they say, well, it's our restaurant's called Reed's and he's Marcel Reed. We feel like we have to have him as a sponsor. It's a natural fit. He's the star quarterback and, well, we only think it's worth this much. Well, no, I think it's worth this much. Well, you can only pay him this much. Okay, well, then I'm going to sue you because you can't tell me how much it's worth to my business in this community.
It's like a franchise tag in the NFL.
If he was in Austin or L.A. or somewhere else like that, you guys would, he'd be making more money because, so that's something that's going to be problematic as well. So, and again, these people are going to find ways around it, these collectives. How are universities going to, is a university going to pay their athletic department money to give to the athletes? Because I think some schools are going to figure out that they can do that. There's a lot out there that's going to keep this thing from being, let's just say, fair and balanced. This is a step towards getting there. And this gives you something that's at least going to be consistent in terms of the rev share. But you've got a million ADs, donor bases, universities, collectives, all agents, all of these things are going to be fighting to find ways around that to keep that number. Let's say, A&M's is $14 million to the athletes. Well, if Texas A&M, and that's their rev share, and if Texas A&M pays out $14 million over the next 3 years to athletes after this one, when everyone's trying to get out in front of it and they're all trying to get all their stuff done. Right. So A&M's payroll, let's say if it's between 25 and 30 million, and teams like Tech and Georgia and Florida, Tennessee, Ohio State, Texas, Oregon, all of them are up north of 25 million, right? They're going to get there first. If you're going to raise your hand and voluntarily be the first one to come back off of that and then do these little $600 nibbles to get it up a little higher than that, okay, we're 14, well now we're up to 20. If your competition is finding ways to circumvent because there are ways, and they're continuing to do that, and they're sitting at 35, the only incentive to being not finding these outlets in other ways is going to be enforcement and discipline. And I just have a hard time believing that out of nowhere there's going to be this enforcement arm that we hear about that starts taking out all these power programs that are lagging in terms of doing it a certain way. I have a hard time believing that there's going to be like severe restrictive punishment doled out to some of these premier programs and spending all this money because then there's going to be more lawsuits, and it's not like the NCAA that had been there forever doing this enforcement. So how are you going to hold up? So the whole thing just still doesn't feel like there's an end in sight. I don't feel like because of this it gave you an end in sight. I do think it was a necessary start, and I'm glad that it started off there.
All right, we'll hit a break here. It's TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. And we're back. TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. All right, let's finish off with some College World Series thoughts. 7 of the 8 teams are in. 2 of those 7 are SEC teams. Billy, anything catch your attention? Coastal Carolina's been a fun story to watch. Arkansas beating Tennessee yesterday.
That Arkansas-Tennessee series did not live up to the hype. It was a letdown because Arkansas just whipped that ass. I love how you said, real classy by Tony Vitello.
I thought it was classy.
Game. Yeah.
You didn't think so?
Yeah, sure. But, I mean, the way that whole deal's gone throughout that time, I mean, that was the first instance of, I think, class on either side. I'm okay with it.
For that one.
Well, I think it's different, too, with the ties he's got to that place. I think he gets a bad rap in terms of, I mean, he just going to ride or die for his team, and he wants them to live on the edge. And
I love that.
You know, we're the same fan base that loved, you know, our man Armage taking a steel chair, and the Torian and the guys coming out saying, if you ain't in my jersey, bleep you. I'm here for it. So when Tennessee's jawing and Arkansas's jawing, I have no problem with it. I love it. So I like the way that team kind of lives right there on the fringe of really stirring things up. But they got they talked it and didn't walk it this weekend. It's funny because you talk to the people, players, coaches across the street over there at Bluebell, and when they played Tennessee, Arkansas, Texas, and LSU in 4 out of 5 weeks there, I think any of them you talked to were saying Arkansas is the best team in the country.
Yeah.
And that was after A&M went up there and beat them 2 out of 3. Now, they also beat LSU 2 out of 3, but they got swept by Texas. They lost 2 or 3 to Georgia. Anyone would have said, yeah, Arkansas is the best team. And we'll see. You know, they got to draw LSU, and LSU, to me, has those 2 pitchers at the top. The rest of it, though, I think favors Arkansas. But in a year like this, I'm just not sure I'm picking them because it just feels like something weird's going to happen. And it might be a team like Coastal.
It'd be a cool story.
It would be an amazing story, and they'd be 2 national titles for them. They got a long way to go, but they haven't lost in a while. And I think you have to pay attention to that. They're a hot team. I think Arkansas is the best team in it. I think LSU is the second best team. They have to play. They have to play night 1 or game 1. But at the same time, LSU was down 5-1 in the middle innings to Arkansas State to be out of it just a week ago.
Right.
So anything can happen in this thing. I'm trying to think if I've got a sleeper pick, not a sleeper pick, but a pick that I like besides Coastal. It might be Oregon State.
Okay. Thank you, Billy. Appreciate you. Tomorrow on the program, Shireen Williams, Mitt Winter, and I think we'll have something else. Thanks so much for watching and listening. We'll see you mañana.